Wellness. We're in downtown Baltimore. We're about to hit the highway and head on down. I just thought I would take a moment. I had some clarity, some recognition, some things that clicked and popped into place, and I wanted to chat about it. Love+Art equals wellness. Precious Mother Love, Heart Happy Hour, Season 9. This is episode 6, and we are moving and grooving, shaking and baking, as I have heard said recently. Was one of my sayings, but I believe there's some more sliding and gliding that this guy has said. But anyway, family. PolyChronic, PolyTerrestrial. I've been talking about PolyChronic for a couple of years now, but something clicked and popped into place in reference to, well, when I heard, okay, so I was listening to Red Pill and Blue Pill on Empire 363 talking about how the algorithms maybe it influences the times and the timelines in such a way. Well, let's just say I don't think they were talking about the algorithms as much as they were talking about the web space timeline, the web space influence. That, you know, if you are a big shot online, you might not be as big of a shot as far as, to fill the stadium like Jay-Z. And so I think that there was a discussion, part of the discussion was talking about how you can, am I going on? I don't know, nothing's coming up on my, okay, so I must keep straight. So the time that you have on the internet, you might be, a big shot in that way, but, he has withstood the time and been able to cross over into that part of, like, I know they talked about that the Beehive has an outreach that for Beyonce would be like her web patrol or her web folks, and probably has a strong audience. But let me just not talk about what other people talk about. Let me just talk about where I am and how I came to my thought process. Did include others' information. Others prompted me to have a certain kind of question in my mind so that I could move forward in my concepts and my grasp of what they were saying. So I believe that the gist of what was said was that that time moves differently in the web space. You can be a sensation overnight on the web space, and become like a big pop star and whatnot. But, the grassroots, the boots on the ground, kind of doing the physical show. That was, so there's text that I might need to take a look at. So it seems as though they were looking at to me, the timeline online is different from the timeline in person. And I think that's what they were saying. And so I distinguished it and applied it to my PolyChronic timeline, which has some relation to a algorithm. Whether it's an influence of, of a natural virility, which I think there is a different and distinction of that. Natural viral expansion versus a prompted algorithm influenced expansion into a viral place or space. But I wanted to apply the concepts, that what I got out of applying that concept to my PolyChronic mindset was that in the case that, say for instance, so Mercury is in retrograde right now. Okay, so it messes with all kinds of timelines. All of the veils are very thin right now because of the dog star influence right now. There's a number of reasons, I believe, because of the Mercury retrograde that also leaves some vulnerability to the veils. And with the all veils being like right now, there's a chance to peer from, to jump from one space to another space to another, chronological application timeline. So the thought in my thoughts is that it's a overlapping. It's like a river of timelines that are like all braided into each other. And if you saw the movie, the one that, and I'm so terrible with movie names, but the one that Oprah did about time, I think it had something to do with, I forget the name of it, but it's about time. And so it kind of resembles the way that like my thoughts can now follow what that movie may have introduced into my psyche at the time, which was that there's so many, like, okay, so with Mercury going into retrograde, the noticeability of things being off is more easily conceiving or perceiving the fact that there is an abrupt slowdown, or how Mercury, it slows down first and then it stops and then it moves forward. So it moves faster than we move. Like we're talked about as being the slow planet, like dog years, 7 years of time, like each week, every 7 days. See, I'm having a hard time applying the concept, but you know what I'm saying? Every hour is like 7 hours or something like that. Every day, every year is like 7 years, so every day is like 7 days or something like that. I don't know if I'm applying the concept correctly, but I hope you get what I'm saying. Furthermore, it's as though that's the case with like a sloth moves very slowly, a sloth itself. So I would think that their concept of time and distance would be different. And so a dog, their concept of time, I'm told that they're not told, but there was something that resonated with me that someone else had shared that said that a dog is able to age in that way, or age faster. So that might mean that people on this planet are aging slower than what might happen in other places, because a dog is more in tune to, let's say, more into the moment, or more into the present, or it's into the presence of the moment. So it seems as though there is a correlation to these times. These times overlap. Like my time is moving at a pace that's different from the canines. Even though I have some canine kinds of concept, like 83 of my genes are or similar to, or have the same foundation. A dog and a human have overlap in 83 different. The mind conceiving time differently could allow an adaptation of the way that thought is. So if I noticed that people that I went to high school with, or even to college, they age differently. There's some that are looking younger than I, and that there are some that they're aging. Signs of aging are surfacing faster on some than on others. I would like to say that, again, the concept, the perception is part of that. And that could possibly be the way to adapt to the different concepts, is to be able to get into the mindset or the perception, to be able to perceive these other concepts of time. So, for instance, Mr. Charlie. And if you're a fan or a follower, you'll know that when, Mr. Charlie and I were together, we were able to go into multiple dimensions, cross into other timelines, other dimensions, other concurrent timelines, back and forth. He led me back and forth every day for a couple of months through what would be invisible doors to others that were not vibrating at the concept or the perception of the timeline that we were crossing into or from. Interesting. I've never said that out loud, but this is, I'm sharing a download, and this is the reason why I picked up the thought, and it said, it's time, do this, talk about that, and so on. So the application of these PolyChronic, PolyTerrestrial, that's, I think, where the PolyTerrestrial comes in, is when we're on the same, I don't even know if they have the same coordinates, but we're in a position that we take 2 steps forward and cross over the threshold of the times. Hermes, Hermes is I think he was the keeper of the threshold, and the concepts of time and delivering messages, which is also, if I'm not mistaken, Hermes was also called Mercury. So this is another reason why, the timing of things changes, the communication, there's a lot of cogs in the wheels that, might get doubled up or tripled up or might be affected because of Mercury's timing changing. Like I said, it slows down and then it stops for, a period, and then it begins to move again. And so, as the time begins to slow down, Mercury being my planet, I'm a Virgo. So when the planet starts to slow down, it starts to look as though Mercury is going backwards, but we're continuing to move forward. So Mercury is, the perception of Mercury is as though it's moving backwards. But paying attention, if we pay attention, we're still moving forward. It's just slowing down. So it's not moving backwards. It appears to be moving backwards. So in the case that it begins to, when it stops, all the messages, all the, the timing, things are, like I said, the cogs in the wheels are sometimes not going to coordinate or line up, or synchronize the ways that it was prior when it was in full throttle or full forward motion. So the forward motion doesn't return until, I think, the 11th of August or something like that. So I don't know how long it takes to slow down, depending on how fast it was, I don't know how long it takes for it to slow down, and then how long it actually stays in the stopped position. But let's just say when our sun does that, on the 21st of December, when we have our winter solstice, and it pauses, it's like when a full moon happens, it's like you see it up to the point where it becomes, and waxing and waning of it. So I believe that could possibly be considered of how Mercury's moving, how Mercury is deciding to take a pause for the cause and step back. And then what happens with that, because being a Virgo, want to dot my I's, cross my T's, more so, even more detailed and specific during the Mercury retrograde time. Hi. One Love and Wellness, Ashe. I see some folks said hi. Oh, hi, gorgeous. Ashe. I'm driving, so I can't see CC. A sailor went to CCC. So I'm paying attention to the motion forward on this highway that I'm on, and I still want to discuss what my thoughts were about, Mercury, Hermes, time, PolyChronic, PolyTerrestrial. Even I had gotten to that point of discussing how I believe that as I was like, okay, another concept of PolyChronic. Okay, so the gateway meditation, which is something that came to me from sun meditations. I was doing some sun meditations. It actually was coming up on the dog days. It was in the years put together, in my downloads. It took about a week, 7 straight days of, or a strong of these sun meditations. And so this gateway meditation, when you perform that, you get a gateway, and ways I just put together things that include a breathing technique that I was taught as a youth, which took me to the gateway, and Ethiopia, at the same age in different, like, at this time right now, one is 60, one is 50, one is 30, and others in their 30s and 40s that live in different techniques. I suppose it's the same way as when you dream. You're in those dimensions when you dream. So in that case, it seems like the time is going by, and it's not. You're sleeping for a certain amount. Okay, looks like my signal was going back and forth. Sorry about that, guys. I appreciate anybody. And I'm wondering, at those times, it's not always initially me saying, like, even thinking, am I dreaming? I don't even sometimes recognize that I'm questioning that at all. It's more like I feel I know what my hand is doing, but like there's no wires that are fired on that note to say that there's any pain. There should be a threshold of some pain at some point, So, but I know that I'm dreaming at that point, and from there I can create. I jump from buildings and do all kinds of stuff. But let me go back to the PolyChronic, PolyTerrestrial, because that dream may be PolyTerrestrial too. Because you may be on another. Just because your physical isn't with you doesn't mean that the essence of you. As far as the astrological travel, as far as all of the things that these alphabet boys have been testing and discovering, you are in another space and time. That takes me to a rhyme, and I think this will be me closing out. Space and time is taking me to a rhyme. So I wrote this when I was 17 years old, and I did not understand what my words were until I was almost like 10 years ago. So that's like lots of years. That's half a century of years for me to decide I understand what my own words were. So it's called, and I've changed the names, but Brown Sweet Sugar Daddy. I'm a brown sweet sugar daddy. That's a tongue's delight. Can you taste it? I'm all the good things wrapped up in one. Can you smell it? I'm as big as you imagined, and too small to be rationed. What am I? I'm your inner thoughts. I travel through your mind. I have no sense of direction, nor that of time. I have no dimension except when you decide to take a trip through your mind. and see what you can find. As much woman as any, and too much man to be. I'm your brown, sweet sugar daddy, ageless as Father Time, finer than the best wine. I have as much pride as a tameless lion, priceless as any treasure, weightless like a feather, pleasure beyond measure. What am I? I'm your brown, sweet sugar daddy. That's a tongue's delight. I'm your brown, sweet sugar daddy. That's a tongue's delight. I have as much pride as a tameless lion. It's also a song. Oh gosh. Anyway, until you decide to take a trip through your mind and see what you can find. So I know I messed up at the end, or I flip-flopped or floopled or flumbled at the end, but you get the gist of what I was saying. I was telling myself that the concept of time is only applied in only when you need to apply it. So when you mind it, when you mind your matters, when you get to the place where these things are coming to mind, you have to do something at a specific time, then that's when it applies. So, well, one love and wellness. No music today, but my brother from the same mother, Lonnie Beats, Nat Love. He is my producer and does the music engineering. He's the brother from the same mother, and he's gonna be. You'll hear some more of his music shortly and soon. So let me put a feather in your cap by saying, have you ever felt the overlap of these polychronic, what in the world is going on with this lady? She has a shopping cart on the highway, and she has a Lexus that she is pushing that shopping cart up to. So where in the world? Maybe she found the shopping cart. I don't know. That's crazy. But anyway, are there times when you have recognized, and especially now since Mercury is in retrograde, since Mercury is slowing down, since Mercury is fluffing up the schedules of things, the communication has to become more clear, more prominent. We're revisiting things. We're we're looking at old conversations. We're tuning into things that we had previously tuned out, because now is the time to apply or to get into or to try to tune into those things, because when Mercury is in retrograde, it will uncover things, that you thought you got over on, or that slipped by you, or that you were out of sync for, you were moving too fast for previously. Now that Mercury is slowing down, you'll get the message, you'll get the big idea, you'll be able to revisit, reconnect, reconstruct, and re all those things. Remember, restructure, whatever. All those things have an opportunity to be taken care of now. It is the time to do that. Tie loose ends and corners. All right, that's what I believe as Mercury being my planet. That's my concept, and I have the perception of how it affects me. So there's some overlapping of sometimes, because some things are slowing down that need they need to stop and get an apple, and stop and get some water. We on a race. We all on that same forward lines. Polychronical, polyterrestrial things. Our emotions don't have a specific timeline of healing. Our physical body, our spiritual body, recently, and I think on my last conversation, I'm just stretching this out and I apologize, but my last conversation on here, I think a couple days ago, I did an episode and I talked about the spiritual healings. That's on a different timeline too. People go back and do the shadow work. That's the time that this is the time to do that shadow work. The veil is the thinnest right now. You can pierce back into those timelines. Time is not a straight line. It is a line. There are timelines, but they're not straight lines. They overlap and they tuck into each other and they coordinate. And, they are on a schedule of a due for arrival. The GPS code is set for it. And, as we all are going along our merry way, merry, quite contrary, how does our garden grow? I talked about that in that last episode too, with silver bells and cocker shells all lined up in a row. They got their own clock time. So, but anyway, one love of wellness. Love plus art equals wellness. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Thanks for seeing me through this process of letting it out as it's being downloaded. Now I have to go back and listen to myself and look at my episodes, which I always have to go back and get the lessons and the jewels from it myself, because not all of it sank in. Like, these were words that were spouting out my mouth while the physical was on autonomic activity of driving this vehicle on this beltway highway. So let's see if I'm able to see anything of anybody. Okay, well, tell me where you're from right quick. Where you from? Anybody on here? Where you hailing from? Ashe, I am on BW Parkway headed into DC on my way to my home city to handle some affairs. And I'm on a timeline. So anybody want to tell me where they're from? I see I got a few folks on here. Where you from? I can't see if you don't share, but okay, so no problem. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Love plus art equals wellness. Our precious mother love, you joined me for another episode of Heart Happy Hour. This is season 9. I'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, and share. Ashe. And click that X